1969 Plymouth Road Runner 440 6-barrel, known by its internal code A12, was not a standard production vehicle. It was a factory-built solution to a very specific problem. Plymouth was winning on the tracks, but they were losing the battle for the stoplights of suburban America. By the middle of the 1969 model year, the budget muscle car formula that had made the original 383 Road Runner a success was starting to feel inadequate against the rising tide of high-displacement monsters from Ford and General Motors. The A12 was the answer, a mid-year strike that bypassed the boardroom and went straight for the jugular of the competition. The philosophy behind the Road Runner was always simple. Give the customer the biggest engine possible in the lightest, cheapest body. In 1968, Plymouth had paid Warner Brothers $50,000 just to use the name and likeness of a cartoon bird, a move that many at Chrysler thought was professional suicide. But it worked. The car was a massive hit. However, by 1969, the gap between the reliable but outmatched 383 and the legendary, expensive, and temperamental 426 Hemi was too wide. Plymouth needed something that offered Hemi-level performance with blue-collar maintenance. This led to the creation of the A12 package, a car so focused on speed that it abandoned the basic amenities of a street vehicle. While other manufacturers were adding leather seats and hidden headlights, Plymouth was stripping the Road Runner down to its bare essentials. They took the massive 440 cubic inch RB block and topped it with a trio of Holley 2-barrel carburetors sitting on an aluminum Edelbrock intake manifold. This was the 6-barrel setup, a mechanical masterpiece that provided 1,350 CFM of airflow. But here's where it gets crazy. This wasn't just a bolt-on kit. The A12 engine featured heavy-duty internal components, including a specific camshaft, chrome-flashed valve stems, and heavy-duty valve springs, all designed to survive the brutal punishment of the drag strip. The performance was immediate and violent. Under light throttle, the car ran on the center 350 CFM carburetor, behaving like a standard family sedan. But the moment the driver floored it, the mechanical linkage snapped the two outer 500 CFM carburetors open. The transition was famous for being less of an acceleration and more of an explosion. With 390 horsepower and a staggering 490 pound-feet of torque officially reported, the A12 was a monster. Most people miss this part. Those power figures were notoriously underrated to keep insurance companies from panicking, but the real output was well north of 430 horsepower. But the engine was only half the story. To keep that massive V8 cool and save weight, Plymouth ditched the standard steel hood. In its place was a massive, flat black fiberglass unit that featured a functional, forward-facing scoop. This wasn't a hinged hood, it was held in place by 4 chrome pins. To check the oil or adjust the carburetors, you had to physically lift the entire hood off the car. It was an intimidating, purposeful look that signaled to everyone on the street that this car wasn't here to cruise, it was here to collect pink slips. Most people don't realize how radical the wheels were for the time. While competitors were moving towards styled alloy wheels and chrome trim, the A12 arrived with plain, black-painted 15-inch steel wheels. No hubcaps, no trim rings, just raw steel and chrome lug nuts. They were wrapped in Goodyear Polyglass Redline tires, which were state-of-the-art in 1969, but still struggled to find grip when the 440 unleashed its torque. This sleeper aesthetic, if you can call a car with a giant scoop a sleeper, became the defining look of the A12. And that's when things went wrong for the competition. In the hands of a capable driver, an A12 Road Runner could run a 13-second quarter mile right off the dealership floor. In 1969, that was supercar territory. It was faster and more reliable than many Hemi cars, which were notoriously difficult to keep in tune for street driving. The 440 6-barrel was the everyman's racer. It didn't require a master mechanic to stay running, it just required a brave soul behind the wheel. However, this raw performance came at a cultural price. America in 1969 was a country in transition. The summer of love was over, and a new, more aggressive era was beginning. Street racing had moved from a fringe hobby to a national epidemic. In Detroit, Woodward Avenue became a literal proving ground where factory engineers would sneak out experimental cars to see how they fared against the public. The Road Runner A12 was the ultimate weapon for this environment. It was loud, it was obnoxious, and it was painted in high-impact colors like vitamin C orange, Bahama yellow, and petite jean blue. It was a car that demanded to be noticed. But that visibility was its downfall. Insurance companies were beginning to track the loss ratios of high-performance vehicles, and the Road Runner was at the top of their hit list. By late 1969, the muscle car surcharge was in full effect. For many young buyers, the annual insurance premium for an A12 was nearly half the total cost of the car. If you were under 25 and wanted to buy a 6-barrel Plymouth, the insurance company treated you like a criminal before you even turned the key. Internal politics at Chrysler played a role as well. The A12 was so effective and so much cheaper than the Hemi that it began to cannibalize sales of the flagship engine. The Hemi was Chrysler's pride and joy, the engine that dominated NASCAR and NHRA. Having a budget 440-powered car consistently beating Hemi owners at local tracks was an embarrassment the corporate suits didn't appreciate. The A12 was a special mid-year release, and despite its popularity, Plymouth decided to discontinue the specific A12 package after only a few months of production. While the 6-pack or 6-barrel engine returned in 1970, the raw, lift-off hood, steel wheel aesthetic of the A12 was gone forever. Then came the external pressures. The 1969 Clean Air Act and the looming threat of an oil crisis meant that the days of high-compression, triple-carbureted V8s were numbered. Federal regulations began to mandate lower lead content in gasoline, which required lower compression ratios. The performance era was being choked out by smog pumps and detuned engines. By 1971, the muscle car as we knew it was effectively dead. The A12 remains a snapshot of that final glorious moment before the world changed. A car built for a window of time that was only a few months wide. Because of its short production run, roughly 1,412 units for the Road Runner, the A12 is now one of the most sought-after Mopars in the world. Most of these cars were driven into the ground. They were the preferred choice for amateur drag racers, meaning they spent their lives bouncing off rev limiters and being modified with aftermarket parts. Finding one today with its original M-code VIN and its numbers-matching drivetrain is an event that stops the collector world in its tracks. Today, these cars regularly command prices in the $150,000 to $200,000 range at auctions. Collectors prize them not just for their rarity, but for what they represent. A time when a major American corporation was willing to sell a thinly veiled race car to the general public. It represents the peak of the no-nonsense muscle car. It didn't have a radio delete option because you weren't supposed to be listening to music. It didn't have power steering because you were expected to have the muscle to turn the wheel yourself. The A12 Road Runner wasn't just a budget racer. It featured Chrysler's most advanced engineering. Its intake manifold utilized early computer-aided flow testing, a rarity in the 1960s, to craft a torque curve that dominated the street. This honest car outperformed rivals, costing twice as much because it had one goal: winning. It wasn't a luxury cruiser, it was a tool, too fast for average drivers and too loud for neighbors. The A12 was a flash of lightning that left only black streaks and a beep-beep in its wake. In June of 1969, would you have chosen the polished Hemi or this raw fiberglass-clad monster? Those who pick the A12 often have the best stories. Share your Mopar memories in the comments and subscribe for more deep dives into Detroit's rarest iron.